Well guys, it's been a while since I last reviewed a film that straight up piqued my interest. Is what I would say if I didn't write the script before making this video.
Fourth wall break inside a fourth wall break. That's like 16 walls.
Although in this case, I take it with a bit of irony because, well, do me a favor and read this title with a straight face. Yeah, when it comes to their original content and my personal preference, Netflix and I don't really go hand in hand. Except that one time we did.
Yo! Ah!
And at first, this film was definitely no different. Just the title alone, K-pop Demon Hunters, teeters between enjoyably silly to absurd pandering. It's about as ridiculous as Kiss being undercover interdimensional superheroes in a Scooby-Doo crossover. Wait, that actually happened? Okay, it's about as silly as a crossover between Disney and Final Fantasy. No, wait, that happened too. And I'm actually a big fan of it. Okay, fair enough. I don't know about you guys, but K-pop has never really been my thing, and it's always felt like a fad that really should have fallen into obscurity by now. Everything I did happen to listen to never felt catchy, and the genre just felt uninspired and oversaturated. But hey, as a lifelong fan of a hybrid franchise that sounded disastrous on paper, I wanted to believe that this film was successful for some semblance of a good reason, so here we are. Okay, successful might be an understatement, because I already angered one toxic subdivision of the internet, so what do I have to lose with another like K-pop stance? Lord, watch over me. Ironically, with that being said though, the music is memorable. Well, most of it, we'll get to that. And yeah, this is probably the most enjoyable animated film of the year. From the studio that brought us the Spider-Verse trilogy. No, wait, third one got delayed again.
Oh, come on!
I expected no less in terms of the animation, to say the least, and, well, what can I say that hasn't already been said? It's expressive, it still feels fresh, great use and techniques of 2D and 3D animation, the mixed frame rates give it some style. And I gotta say, usually girl bossing, for lack of a better term, is kind of an annoying cliche nowadays, but I can't help but respect it when they own it so well. Kinda like Bayonetta, except they're not salacious about it. You know you're doing something right when a line like, "Fit check from my napalm era," actually put a smile on my face. Even with how theatrical and zany these girls can be, none of it felt too corny, forced, or pretentious. Also, memes. I don't think I needed the animation or the theatrics alone to sell me on these girls having believable personalities, and that's a good thing. Mira's outlandish and defiant, but she still knows when to get serious, although I don't know how I'm expected to take her upbringing to heart. Wow, she dyed her hair and can't sit properly for a picture. What a rebel. At the very least, it's still funny when it's trying to be. Zoe's cheerful and optimistic, but she can still read the room, and that just adds to her character.
Eagerness to please. Maybe a little too eager.
What? You guys would tell me if I was really like that, right?
Admittedly though, whatever character arc was meant for these two, you can just tell that Rumi took too much priority. Speaking of which, she's confident and perceptive, but she still has some very noteworthy vulnerabilities. It's just nice to see that the film actually takes its time humanizing the girls through their bond as friends, and ironically, through their presentation. Because if there's one thing I know about the K-pop industry, it's how dehumanizing it tends to be. On that note, Bobby's character is the most unrealistic part of the film. Moving on. 3 girls chosen to continue a long line of demon hunters, doubling as music stars. Chosen how, you ask?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's mostly not made very clear. They form a pop trio named Huntrix, and through their fans' morale, they form a magic barrier around the world called the Hun Moon, which wards off demons from access to the human realm. Mostly. What happens to the demons that sneak through? They try sucking any soul in sight. So the Hunters, as they're called, do exactly what their title implies. That is a face that says, "I've killed your kind before, and I enjoyed it." Meanwhile, their music has gotten so prominent that the barrier is going gold soon, zoning off all demons permanently. As for what happens to, say, half-demons such as Rumi herself, well, we might just find out since she hopes to keep that secret afterwards, spurred on by basically her whole upbringing, and it shows. There's a couple of flashbacks, but her behavior adds up well enough anyways. She's a workaholic, she's never set foot in a bathhouse against her friend's wishes. Oh, and for some reason, being half-demon screws with her singing voice. What? Okay, either I'm missing something, or it's not really made clear why. Metaphorically, I guess it makes sense, but literally?
I don't get it.
Maybe I'm too much of a lore junkie, but now I kinda see why I had a hard time getting into this film at first. The premise was a little too silly to where the lore doesn't match its tone, and when it tries to contrast, we got a few plot holes. The world building is noticeably unfocused, but to be fair, this is the kind of film that obviously has bigger priorities. Priorities I'd love to talk about in detail, but you know. So, how do the demons plan on preventing this golden honeymoon? Well, this brief moment 10 minutes in is exactly when I realized that I should take this film a little less seriously. Yeah, a group of demons form a competing boy band called the Saja Boys in hopes of stealing the fans, and by extension, weakening the barrier. How did this group manage to rise to prominence in literally just a few days? Who knows, but I could say the same for K-pop in general. Heyo! As for their first song, well, someone has to be the one to say it. Soda pop is generic, it's overplayed, it's cliche, and it's just downright annoying. I'm talking Let It Go 2013 levels of annoying, especially here in Mexico. But then it hit me. This song was written and performed by literal demons as part of an effort to end the world. Not to mention, its lyrics are a euphemism for wanting to eat your soul. At the best of times, I'm supposed to hate it.
Nice!
Seriously, the choreo is so generic, you could almost put any song over it and it would fit. Case in point? And a personal favorite of a friend of mine. But moving on. The girls catch on to them being demons because, you know, patterns. And well... I got nothing to say here, I just love a good suit-up scene. So while they fight, the lead boy named Genu sees Rumi's patterns, so he gets his demon, tiger, and bird, sure, why not, to invite her to talk things out. I don't know how they did it, but the character that doesn't talk has probably the funniest scene in the movie. Okay, second most. But I digress. We learn that Genu's not exactly a full-blown demon either. He sold his soul to the demon king Gima about 4 centuries ago for talent that got his family out of poverty, ultimately condemning him to hell while his family was thrown back into it. To the surprise of nobody, he's been stuck as Gima's bitch ever since. He sympathizes with Rumi through, I'm just gonna say it, the weakest element of the movie. To be fair, I'm not gonna pretend this is the worst romance I've ever seen. It's not bland and fake like Sam and Luna, forced and toxic like Lincoln and Ronnie Ann, or forced and uncompelling like Louis and Amity. I regret nothing! Look, it's one thing when you connect with someone out of resonance or respect to say the least, but after 400 years of damnation, I'd say Genu's more so just relieved and grateful that Rumi broke Gima's influence than he ever was infatuated with her, if at all. The bond is one thing and it makes for a couple good laughs, but passing this off as romantic is kind of a detriment in this context. Or at the very least, it's trivial in the grand scheme of things. Mainly because, well, half of its basis is built on a lie, but we'll get to that. I'll just say this romance is tame and it holds the most forgettable song in the movie. Seriously, I could smell the auto-tune from a mile away. And if there's supposed to be some sort of parallel between them and Rumi's parents, who we know little to nothing about, by the way, it just makes it even more awkward. Rumi could just as easily be doing what she does for him and vice versa out of platonic sympathy, and not much would change in the overall narrative. It almost feels like you could cut any romantic subtext between these two out of the film, even in the genuinely heartfelt moments, and you still wouldn't miss much. Except maybe at the end. And speaking of Genu, some of his moments feel a little unrealistic for a guy who's been around for centuries. I get that they're trying to humanize him since he's technically human, but some of his moments just come off as too silly to give that vibe completely. At least sometimes it was really funny anyways.
But first, I want to talk about those pants. Teddy bears and choo-choo trains? Really? Choo-choo.
Why does the bird wear a tiny hat?
I made it for the tiger, but the bird keeps taking it.
But anywho, he agrees to help against the demons, but then Gima reminds him about exactly what happened all those years ago. He never shared his fame and wealth with his family, and he didn't tell that to Rumi until, well, he betrays her too, believing that redemption is beyond his reach because he's ultimately doing this just for himself, just like with them. Rumi is exposed as a half-demon as a result, realizing that if she had come clean to her friends sooner instead of just stacking red flags throughout the movie, most of this mess wouldn't have happened. So Huntrix falls apart, Genu and his boy posse put the people in a trance, and give one final and not so subtle performance. Seriously, they are literally dressed as Korean Grim Reapers and... Oh. Honestly, dare I say that Your Idol is an S-tier villain song? The performance isn't subtle, but the lyrics are effective, and it's still quite the spectacle. In the same vein that Hellfire is an S-tier villain song. You don't condone the messaging or encourage the ideas, but intellectually, it's incredibly memorable. All seems lost, but then Rumi confronts her adopted mother for spurring her into hiding her heritage. The moment feels kind of rushed. Celine's motivations are still a little vague, but at least it's all understood well enough. Through her emotional turmoil, though, Rumi realizes that maybe there's a better way to go at things. Maybe life gets easier when we're a little more honest with ourselves. Our shame, our mistakes, our misguided choices, our demons, no pun intended, they're there. We're only human. We're bound to make mistakes, both big and small, like Genu, or in Rumi's case, we're bound to put up with things we didn't ask for. In the best of circumstances, we feel bad about it at first. But in time and with a heart in the right place, we move past it and it won't define us anymore. We feel guilty or we hate the thought of it and we renounce it, but we also shouldn't pretend it never happened. Rumi spent her whole life thinking that merely being half-demon was something to be ashamed of, something that needed to be purged at all costs, spurred on by basically her mother and her prejudice of anything demon. Which, for the most part, she was right, but that's besides the point. So when all that repression comes crashing down in the worst of ways, Rumi confronts Celine about how she didn't love all of her, realizing that it's part of what she is, but it never had to be part of who she is. Coming clean soon enough to at least the two people she probably could have trusted with this would have definitely saved her a lot of trouble. Namely, then turning on her, which is what she feared the most, and not to mention, save a lot of other lives. Yeah, side note, this film has an insanely high body count. For all Mira and Zoe knew, sabotaging the Hun Moon and all those casualties at the last second was Rumi's plan. Especially when they hear that she conspired with Genu. So when her literal demonic outbursts damage the Hun Moon, you understand her resolve to make a new one. A more honest one. From there on out, Rumi sees that there was nothing wrong with what she was literally born with. By uncovering the part of her that isn't human willingly, she ironically showed the most of her humanity. Beauty in the broken glass. Darkness and harmony. This is what it sounds like. That's why you get how she and her friends literally just hug it out as they're singing, and how Genu was so moved that he takes Gima's blast. And then it hit me. Souls being touched by their music, their singing, and what's being sung is the biggest counter to demons there is. And that's established from the very beginning of the movie. So moving a soul that's been locked in damnation for 400 years probably would be strong enough to help fight the Demon King. Honestly, this messaging is already so strong that I almost don't get why the plot sometimes fixates on this whole demon racism allegory half the time, when its other morals are already so much more nuanced than that, and less preachy. Not to mention, and dare I say it, the prejudice is mostly justified. In terms of outlier demons, Jinu's just a condemned soul, Rumi was just born from one, and as for her dad, well, who knows, the movie doesn't tell us much about him. Was he a typical soul sucker, or was it also one of those devil's pack situations? You see why backstory and lore are so important here? Your not all demons are bad message is just made all the more flawed. And yeah, we really needed more racism allegories in 2025. Aside from a couple anecdotes, there's really not enough evidence to support that idea, no matter how much the narrative insists on it.
Demons are never nice. You're a demon. Demons don't feel anything.
Is that what you think? That's all demons do. If hate could defeat Kima, I would have done it a long time ago. Trust me.
Hell, they probably could have formed some with the Soldier Boys, but outside of the songs, we never really see them interacting with each other. Other than Jinyu, they're just as rotten as the rest anyways. The one person who probably would have learned the most out of this lousy messaging is absent for most of the film, and we don't even see what becomes of her by the end. So now what? Any more outliers that the hunters should know about before locking the Hun Moon? Probably? Too bad. Enjoy staying in hell. So yeah, this film would have been a lot less cluttered with its ideas if it just stuck to its guns. But for the most part, those guns are still a solid and memorable film. K-pop Demon Hunters tries to be the best of both worlds. A charming spectacle and a meaningful story about understanding your shame. For the most part, it delivers. I laughed, I enjoyed what was there, and I connected with the characters' struggles. Although, it definitely performs better as a spectacle than a story. It misses the mark a few times with a lack of focus and consistency in its ideas, but all in all, this might be one of the most fun animated films I've seen in recent years. Out of all the ones I've seen as of late, this is definitely the most unique, and I mean that in the best of ways. A seemingly showy but ultimately respectable experience, and it's not entirely owed to its biggest selling point, which I think is a great thing. I sat down for the show because these girls showed me